it really seriously made a lot of people contemplate what's going on in the country and how all of us could do more to try and make things better. I did a couple of interviews, and I think that is we may share one of clips from them most motivating factors for Paul Finebaum right now. And I'll give you a little bit of a preview of our conversation. I also talked with Senate candidate in Georgia, Derek Dooley. Paul goes around to college campuses for the SEC network to try to beat John Ossoff, and he meets a lot of Georgia college Senate kids race down because there. So we may have a couple of cuts for that for the crowd at the events later in the week as well. But we did two, and what I would say long-form interviews. I talked what he saw happen to Charlie an hour. Made it very hard. Some of you are going to immediately know who Paul Finebaum is. Continue to just he is a for the SEC Network, ESPN analyst, and I think the reason he wanted to sit down with me is I made that decision several years ago. COVID was my motivating network show. If you watch ESPN at all, he's regularly on First Take with Stephen A. Smith. I've known Paul for 20 years, so I got started in radio through writing. In local, some of you have been listening to me since I did local sports talk radio in my hometown of Nashville. And I was employed back in the day on 104.5 The Zone in Nashville doing a daily sports talk show. And Paul was employed in Birmingham, Alabama, doing a daily sports talk show as well. And we were both employed by a company called Cumulus. They dominated sports talk in Birmingham and dominated sports talk in Nashville. And so I've known Paul for 20 years. Some of you listening to me right now all over the state of Alabama, you've heard me go on Finebaum's show back in the day quite a lot. So we had a 1 hour long sit down. And as part of that conversation, many of you know, because Tommy Tuberville, who's been on this show a great number of times, is giving up his Senate seat to run for governor of Alabama, there is an open Senate seat in Alabama. And I've truth be told, I'll just tell you everything. I have had a lot of conversations with a lot of people in Alabama about what's going to happen with that Senate seat. I talked to Bruce Pearl about it a great deal. Auburn men's basketball coach, Bruce Pearl. He's been on this program. He's a great friend of mine. He really seriously thought about running. He has stepped down as a college basketball coach at Auburn. He's basically going to be now the mayor of Auburn. He's not running. Paul told me that he had similar, Paul Finebaum, conversations with Bruce Pearl. We're all friends. And he wasn't going to run if Bruce Pearl was going to run. But Bruce Pearl said, you know what, I'm not going to do it. And Paul and I had conversations, and he said, hey, Clay, I'm thinking about doing this. And I said, okay, well, let's kind of walk through it. And he said, what's the best way that I could let people know that I'm serious about this? And I said, well, how about you sit down with me and we have a long-form discussion, and we'll get into it. And that full long-form discussion is going to go up tomorrow. But Paul, we are going to release a couple of clips. You'll see me talking about it on Fox News with Will Cain. This just came out. I think Paul's going to run. This is my opinion based on my conversations with him. He could certainly change his mind, but I would encourage you guys to go listen to the full conversation. But here is the specific part about why now? Why is Paul Finebaum thinking about giving up sports and going and running for the Senate in Alabama? Here was his answer.
I had received a text from someone who I knew that I'd seen at an event, and it led to another conversation. And ultimately, one or two people in Washington had reached out to me about whether I would be interested in politics, something I'd never thought about before, something I didn't really think possible. I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina. I wasn't there wasn't a lane there to get involved, but and I gave some thought to it as this weekend unfolded with Charlie, and got a little bit more interested. And you know, there's an open. Sorry to cut you off, but Tommy Tuberville is running for governor. A former Auburn coach who beat Alabama 6 times in a row, and I think it's fair to say he's going to win pretty comfortably, seems to be the assessment. There's an open Senate seat. Bruce Pearl, also at Auburn, had talked about it. He says now he's not going to run. Is that with the conversation? Or are you somewhat interested and intrigued at the opportunity of
looking into that Senate race? I'm assuming that's what they reached out to you to talk to you about.
Yes. And I was hesitant at first because I was very aware of Bruce's interest and huge fan of Bruce, and I thought he would have a tremendous voice. So I was very cautious. I didn't take it too seriously. And then ultimately, I ended up talking to someone who made it clear that there was a desire for me to be involved. And this person, obviously, that shall remain nameless, was compelling and compassionate in the approach to me. And I started thinking about it.
This is a person highly up in the Alabama political universe, is that fair to say? That
Yes.
you're having the conversations with?
Yes.
Okay, so you're thinking about it now. How, when thinking about it, the next step, the steps, I mean, obviously, I'm assuming that what people would say is, Paul Finebaum has basically 100% name recognition in the state of Alabama, right? I don't think that's crazy. You have the ability to obviously speak on television. You're a good communicator. You've talked to the people of Alabama for decades now. What's that time frame look like for you? So there are people who want you to run. You've been struck, I mean, I think maybe it's fair to say, by the seriousness of things going on in the world. You've had a lot of success in sports. Some people would say, are you willing to give up? I mentioned Lee Corso. You could ride this thing out for another 20 years and you could be in your 90s saying goodbye to, an SEC football stadium. I don't think that's a crazy, trajectory that's out there. But this other pathway is potentially beckoning or intriguing to you.
It is very intriguing. I am thinking about it constantly. And that's difficult to do, Clay, as you're talking about college football.
Yeah.
20 hours a week debating Stephen A. Smith, as you well know. I mean, you're sitting there talking to Stephen A. Smith, and as you're waiting for your turn, you're thinking, I wonder if I should move forward on this. So it's been going on for a couple of days, or if not weeks, and it's just hard to chisel it down to make an educated decision. But to say I'm considering it, of course, yes.
Okay, so the question in there was, what is part of the motivating factor? He said Charlie Kirk. And I do think, and you may have experienced this in your own life, because I know how many of you were impacted. I think a lot of people, no matter what they do for a living, you could be a sports talk radio show host at ESPN. You could be a garbage truck driver in Spokane, Washington, listening to us right now. You could be a truck driver in Northern Virginia. It really, seriously made a lot of people contemplate what's going on in the country and how all of us could do more to try and make things better. And I think that is one of the most motivating factors for Paul Finebaum right now. And I'll give you a little bit of a preview of our conversation. Paul goes around to college campuses for the SEC network every weekend. And he meets a lot of college kids because the kids show up for the crowd at the events that he does. And in talking with him, what he saw happen to Charlie made it very hard for him to think, I want to continue to just do sports for the rest of my career. And I think the reason he wanted to sit down with me is I made that decision several years ago. COVID was my motivating factor. You guys know I still love sports. I still talk a lot about sports. I think it's important to go to where people are culturally and connect with them. That's why I still do a lot of sports, because I think you can really connect with people in speaking their common language where they are, as opposed to trying to drag everybody into politics all the time. And I made that decision. I feel fortunate to have the boss, Julie Talbot, that we do, because she really got me by saying you could do sports talk radio for the rest of your life and not have the impact that you would have in 6 months of doing this show that we do now. And so if you really, and I do, care desperately about the direction of the country and you care about the world that your kids are coming into, then you have to say yes to this opportunity. I didn't seek it out. And I think that's what Paul now is finding and working through in his head in the wake of what happened to Charlie Kirk. And I really do believe that he's going to run. And I think he's going to win. And I asked him in the interview, because there's always the skepticism, okay, are you just doing this to get more money? Are you just doing this for the attention that it's going to create? And I've known Paul for 20 years. I don't think he is. I think he legitimately feels like there are serious things in life that picking the winner of college football games, while it's fun, is the toy chest of life, and he's concerned about the trajectory of the country. And I think he loves the people of Alabama. And so, again, as we kind of work through this thing is going to land like a neutron bomb. I'm just going to be honest with you, because a little bit later today, we're going to release a clip where Paul says, hey,